So our topic at hand today is going to be vehicle maintenance functions. Now, if you've worked on a fairly modern vehicle anytime in the past, 10, 15 years, you'll know that over the past few years, it's been increasing the amount of intervention from a scan tool that is necessary to perform even basic maintenance like brake pad changes, oil changes, resetting maintenance reminder lights, replacing batteries, replacing windshield wipers, all these different maintenance functions that need to be performed and need intervention from a scan tool. So we're just going to talk through a few of these different functions that we might need. So like I said, oil reminder resets, parking brake, put it in the service mode, take it out of service mode in order to, or put it in service mode to compress the caliper. Then when I'm done with the pad change, I need to take it out of service mode so the parking brake will work. Battery resets, TPMS resets, even DPF regens. We think about that. That's kind of a maintenance item. Hopefully the customer doesn't get so far where you can't regen the DPF anymore. But sometimes you might need to force a regen as just a matter of probably more fleet maintenance than anything. But I'm sure there's situations out there where you might need that regen factor as well. So we'll just walk through a few of these different things. First one up is oil change functions. So another key, not just scan tool related, I guess, it'd be more information related as well, is I need to have accurate, timely oil change information. Because if you think back to, I know when I was in the shop, we had the big book. You'd hang off and, you'd have to scroll through and find the vehicle and find how much oil it took. For Subaru, we kind of knew, but if it was an off-brand car, you might need to go and reference the book or any sort of other reference information. Let's give you an example. We got a Chevy pickup truck. It's got a 5.3 engine that is super common over here in the States anyways, in North America. Super common engine, super common truck. And 2013 5.3 liter would take 5W30 oil and it would take 6 quarts of it. Now, if we just go one model year different to a 2014 Chevy with a 5.3, it goes to 0-20 and it takes 8.5 quarts. So that's a decent change. If I'm 2.5 quarts short, if I just think, oh yeah, it's a 5.3, it takes 5W30 and it's 6 quarts. Well, what about if it's winter time? I mean, it still probably wouldn't run terribly wonderfully in the summer at 5W30, but it'd probably still be okay. But if you went to 0-20 or didn't do 0-20 and it was winter time, it might cause some issues with whatever hydraulically operated, oil operated functions you had on the vehicle. So 2.5 quarts, that's a big difference. However, if we look, it actually takes 8 quarts because GM came out with a bulletin and said, oh, wait a second, we actually specified too much oil in this vehicle, and we actually have to back it off another half quart. So we went down to 8 quarts. So if you didn't have that timely information and that bulletin in order to be able to read it or have it integrated into your repair information somehow, you wouldn't know that, oh, I'm overfilling this vehicle or I'm underfilling this vehicle, depending on what the situation was, right? So here is an example of what this might look like on our scan tool. So if you have one of our Snap-on tools with the quick lookups function, this is how it presents itself, right? So we see up top there, this is the 2013, the 5.3, 6 quarts, and SAE 5W30, it says, right? And then if we go to the next year, which is the 2014 we talked about, there's that 5.3 again on the bottom, and it says 8 quarts. If you look at the very last line there, it'll say, note, the engine oil capacity has been updated from 8.5 quarts to 8 quarts in reference to GM's document ID, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's a PIP. So if you didn't have that information in a timely fashion, you might overfill the vehicle, right? Possibly causing some other problems. Other information, you might need to know a reset procedure on how to reset the reminder light on a vehicle. So GM has 30 plus different, across the different makes or models, across the different models, over 30 different, we see in this example, it's 36, the procedure 36 for this. And this is how you would do that, right? So you can actually go and do this, in this case, on the thumb wheel, if the oil display is active. You can also go into there in the scan tool and change the oil life as well. So there's an option for a service interval reset on that 2014 inside the scan tool. And if you go into the reset, by default, it resets to 100%, but it can be scrolled in 2% increments if you need other than 100%. So if you wanted to put 98% or 80% or whatever that happens to be, you can do that and you can scroll up and down. You hit continue, and then you just have that plus or minus button there if I want 100% or lower it down, like I said, in 2% increments. So that's just one example. Many other manufacturers have some sort of service reset that needs to be done. This can be done both through just the regular scanner function, or you can have a quick link to it through if you have that quick lookups menu on the tool as well. Then let's flip over to tire functions. TPMS has been around since what, 2008, right? Mandated in 2008 over in North America anyways. So anytime you rotate tires, anytime you change tires, anytime you go from summer to winter tires, you do have to perform a tire pressure monitoring reset. Now, I would hope in this day and age in 2025, when I'm recording this, that any shop out there that does any sort of tire work would have some sort of capability of resetting TPMS. Because if you don't do that, you're really doing a disservice to your customer if you think about it, right? If I rotate the tires and I don't tell the vehicle that I rotated the tires, the vehicle is going to think it's where that tire is wherever it was last time it got programmed. So if you're driving down and most modern vehicles, they have a picture on the dash that you can scroll to and see where your tire pressures are. And if, this one's at 18 PSI and it says it's on the left front, but really it's on the right rear because you rotated the tires, customer's going to maybe get confused and not understand, this tire's not low, but it's got 40 pounds in it. What's going on? And it says it's 18 pounds. And then they'll bring it in and it'd be a problem. And maybe they don't bring it to the tire shop where it got done, or the shop where it got done. Then you have it and you're like, well, what's going on? Because you see that, it's definitely lower on that one side. Maybe you can check PID data and stuff like that. But if you don't reset the tires every time you rotate them, you're doing a disservice. You're causing confusion. It should be mandatory at this point. I would imagine most shops have it, but I'm sure there are also some shops out there that don't. So just be aware, if you don't have some sort of way to reset the TPMS, it might be something to look into. So in this example, this is a GMC Acadia. So you're going to set the tire pressure of all the wheels to a pressure specified in the tire, set the parking brake, place the vehicle power mode in on-run start, make sure the tire pressure display options on, and then you can do some things in the driver's information control. Other times, and you need to put it into a learning mode, and then you would go around and use a sensor activation tool to activate the different sensors around. It'll chirp the horn, etc. I'm not going to read through the entire procedure word by word, but that's an example on an Acadia. How about a BMW? BMW can use iDrive, the internal unit on there. So you go to My Vehicle, Vehicle Status, Reset Tire Pressure Monitor, start the engine but don't drive. Go to Reset Tire Inflation Pressure and Drive. The wheels are displayed in gray, and the following is displayed: resetting tire pressure monitor. And after I drive over 19 miles an hour for a short period of time, the set tire inflation pressures will be accepted as reference values. The reset will be completely automatic while driving. So I guess BMW just knows what tire's on what corner of the car. So that's helpful. So maybe it knows, okay, so the last ID of this tire pressure monitor was this. And now I see that the tire pressure is over here. So now I guess it kind of knows where it was, right? So that will go through and it'll say, tire pressure is active. Then on some vehicles, like this 2018 Ram, there's no reset procedure available within the scan tool itself, or at least in repair information, right? So no reset procedure listed inside the repair information. Says no content available. We could go over to the functional reset, which would be the scan tool reset. By the way, it's a 2018, so that's behind security, of course, behind the secure gateway on that. And in this case, it's going to drop us in the menu where we're going to program the tire IDs individually. So we can do left front, left rear, right rear, and then, of course, spare tire as well. So this one gives us the option for a spare, which is nice. So it should be used to write the left front tire ID. So that's the one I chose first because that's the one you should do first. It's going to tell you what tire sensor ID is already in there, and then you're going to use the 8-digit code that's on the sensor if you change the sensor. Make sure you have the 8-character sensor ID available. It can be found on the tire sensor label. You could also pull data PIDs if you knew what wheel was on what corner as well. It's going to pop in this menu. We're going to go up to where it says edit up here, and then just go through. We're going to type in whatever the sensor ID is. It's going to verify, are these the characters that you want? You take continue, and then it'll go through and program it into the vehicle. So that's another step. So that's more like a coding operation. You have to punch in a code in order to do that. Then Nissan does it totally different. So they have a couple different ways of doing it. Either without a tool, they can do it with a tool or without a tool. So if you have a tool, it's going to walk through, you're going to want to use the scan tool. If you're going to do without a tool, what you're going to do is you're going to set the tires to specified pressures on each corner. So in this case, front left would be 36 and so on and so forth. You'd go through that. And then once it's set to that, you drive the vehicle down the road, and then the vehicle says, oh, I see 36 PSI on this tire. That must mean it's on the left front, right? So it's kind of a dumb mode to do it. Or we can do it a smart way, or the smart way, with the actual scan tool. So you go into the scan tool, and they give you an option for with or without the J tool, which would be an activation tool, such as TPMS 5, TPMS 6, tools like that. Those have little antennas on them. You would take the antenna, put it on the side of the tire. You activate a tire, left front, right rear, left rear. Just go clockwise around the vehicle. It's the same procedure for any vehicle as to what order you need to do the tires in anyways. It's in the same procedure to do that way. So you go around with that unit. And in this case, otherwise, we can do it without the tool, right? So if a new sensor is installed, you have to use the tool. But if you don't have new sensors and you just rotated it, you could do it this way, and that's just setting them to whatever it says. So in this case, on this vehicle, it's 34 on the left, 31 on the right, 26 in the rear, and then 29 on the right rear, right? So you just go, it's kind of going around them. And then key on, engine off, you would go through the next message, and then you drive the vehicle 5 to 15 minutes until it says test completed, and then you're done. Otherwise, if it does fail, you have to use that the tire pressure activation tool on that. All right, so we did oil. That's probably the most common one, right? We talk tires. That's going to be fairly common, you know, rotate and balance with an oil change, right? That's probably the second most common maintenance we did in the shop. Next one's battery. Batteries are pretty common. So many manufacturers nowadays, it says some, but I would go with many manufacturers nowadays use some sort of a battery management system. And I'm not just talking about hybrids or EVs or anything like that, because they do use a battery management system. But even for just a 12-volt battery, on many vehicles, it has an amp clamp on there that it adjusts the current flow to the battery based on the current status of the battery, state of charge, state of health, and so on. So the battery monitoring system uses sensors, controllers, and software to monitor the battery state of charge. This allows the vehicle to charge the battery depending on load and state of health. There's a lot of vehicles nowadays that have adjustable alternators that'll adjust output up and down depending on how that battery condition is. But when a battery is replaced, the system needs to be reset, and it's usually reset with a scan tool. So if you think about over time, the battery wears out, maybe I need to increase that current flow out of that variable alternator. So if I replace the battery and I don't tell the vehicle I did, it might think, oh, it's still got this battery that's 5 years old or however old it is, and I'm going to just pump up the charge and I could blow out that battery pretty quick. So in this case, this is on a 2016 Audi. So it has battery parameterization with the battery is replaced, or a coding and configuration function in there. So I can read the current code, go to a configuration list, or program a new code. We'll program the new code in here. Please write down the current code before you program a new code in case you need to re-enter it if it's desired at a later date. So there's the code. You would hit edit. You would type it in, right? I don't have any other screenshots of it, but you would type in the code, whatever the code of the battery is, and then it would tell it, here's the new battery. Battery parameterization offers us a program, a test program. So we'd hit continue. You can change the specified capacity in amp hours, the battery serial number, the first top 3 and the last 10. So you would type that in there, you'd hit program, and it would allow the battery to go in there. Or put the new battery in there and basically learn the vehicle to it. All right, how about brakes? That's very common nowadays, right? So most parking brakes, a lot of them are on the calipers now. They got the little electric motor that clamps down on the wheel or on the caliper in order to put your parking brake on. So in this case, I decided it's on a 2015 Kia Optima, and it's we decided to go through service resets and relearns in this case. So if you have one of Snap-on's tools with the service resets and relearns menu, one nice function of that is it allows you to go through and see by job, what might I need to reset or relearn on this vehicle? So that'll give you access to that. So for example, we changed it a couple years ago where it has maintenance listed on the top, because of course that's the most common thing you're going to have. So wheel alignment, replace calipers, replace rotors, replace pads, replace spark plugs, right? So there's resets associated with that. But replace disc brake pads is the one we're going to choose this time. Then we're going to go down to functional resets and calibrations. And then there is, you can see there's pad change mode before change and pad change mode after change. There's also a maintenance mode in there for engaging and disengaging of the parking brake. And then a couple other bidirectional controls that are in there as well. So quite a few actuator controls in there. But if I wanted to change my pads before, I would go in there. And before changing the brake pad, this function should be performed. This will allow you to push the piston into the caliper by retracting the spindle nut with the actuator. So this is a common thread that I've seen or heard out there listening to, like, say, customer care calls and things like that when people call in. They're like, hey, I did the function, but it didn't retract the calipers. Not every vehicle will it retract the calipers. In this case, as you see there, it's going to retract the spindle nut that pushes on the caliper in order to close it, but you still have to manually push that piston back into the caliper in order to get that access, right? So execute the before pad change mode, change the pads, and then you're going to do pad change mode after pad change. While pad change mode in progress, you're going to see this DTC as well, and a test message will be displayed in the cluster to know that you're going in and replacing the pads. Should go in, and then engine off, ignition on, correctly operating. All these different modules need to be operating correctly, and release the parking brake, brake pedal, and then hit continue, and you'll hear it go, and it'll pull it back. Then you would manually push in the caliper, and then get that done. And then after it's done, you go into after change, and then say that this function engages the parking brake after the brake pads have been replaced. Do not use this function while the pads are being replaced. So that'll cause problems that would blow out, could blow out the piston. All right, please make sure to make general safety precautions. Make sure nobody else is in the car when you're doing a brake job, basically. So I continue, engine off, ignition on, make sure everything's operating correctly. Keep stepping on the brake until the motor stops and the whole process is finished. So you need to step on the brake pad, press on it real good, and then press OK. And then it'll go. Simple enough. Many vehicles are that very similar style, right? Sometimes, like I said, they'll retract and push out the caliper. Most times it's going to be, we're just going to take the force off the caliper and then you need to physically press it into place. So just be aware, when in doubt, check your service information, basically. Then we have diesel functions, right? So probably the biggest one is going to be my diesel DPF system, right? So we have an oxidation catalyst, however, in there as well. Diesel particulate filter, exhaust temp sensors, DPF back pressure sensors, hydrocarbon dosing valves in there. Other miscellaneous sensors are going to be in there as well, which may also need to be reset, but I wouldn't think of those as a maintenance item, right? So if I need to do like a NOx sensor or something like that, that's not really maintenance, but you may have to reset a NOx sensor in relation to this system, but we're not going to go there right now. So DPFs, their main job is to collect it and then burn it. Now, if you've seen any of my diesel emissions class, we're going to have another one coming up here in a few weeks too. But if you've seen any of the diesel emissions class, when I started researching and learning about DPFs, I thought it was kind of a interesting idea, the way they did it. I kind of understand the reasoning behind it, but then I also don't understand the reasoning behind it. So we're going to collect all this soot, right? So we got the little elves in there. They're going to play catch. Oh, wrong mouse there. So they're going to come in here. They're going to play catch. They're going to store it. Then once it gets full enough to a point, it's going to then burn it and then send it back off into the atmosphere. So I'm thinking, okay, so it's taking all the soot, it collects it over time, over a spread out area. And then I'm going to take it, I'm going to do a regen at some point, and it's going to get real hot and all that soot gets burned off into the atmosphere. So what did we really do in that case? I don't know. Just something to think about, I guess. But hey, it's stuff that's out there. We have to deal with it. But I'm not sure it's really not necessarily even causing more problems than it's worth. But anyways, a DPF has like an every other honeycomb structure. So it goes into the open holes, right? The soot and everything goes into the open holes and it gets caught in the ones with the closed holes. So we don't have any extra stuff going through there. So you can see it goes through an open hole and then it gets caught in here, and that's where it's going to be. All right. And then a problem we might have, though, in that case is it might get plugged up with soot. Once it gets to this point, you're going to have to replace it. But during normal operation, it should be able to regen itself. So we have a couple different ways. We have a passive regen, which is going to be when the vehicle is driving and when the diesel particulate filter is temp is high enough, it's going to burn the soot off from the DPF without needing extra fuel, and it's going to happen under high load. An active regen can be initiated by the PCM or a scan tool. We can force it. And what happens when we have an active regen, it's going to add extra fuel to the exhaust to raise the DPF temperatures to about 1,025 degrees Fahrenheit, and then that'll burn off all the stuff. You can do it while it's parked. Different manufacturers call it different things. I know, for example, like Dodge calls that a stationary desoot. So it's not necessarily intuitive if they call it something different. It might not necessarily be called a regen. So that's just one example of where you might want to watch out for that. Or we can do a parked regen, which can be initiated by a dashboard switch. It's usually used when attempts at active regens fail. And then if we get to the point where we have a code in there, there's certain codes that can be set that will not allow a regen at all. Nothing you can do. That means the customer has driven it to the point where that DPF is fully clogged. There's no way I'm going to be able to regen it. I need to replace it or rebuild it. There are some places out there that rebuild DPFs as well. I know of a couple places out there. So, but that's just a couple examples, right? So let's go live on the tool and we'll look at a couple other examples of where you might see, maintenance related items here. So let's pull up let me get this. I got to get I'm working in a different studio today, so I gotta not quite. There we go. This one, yes, this one. All right. So there's my Zeus. All right. So let's go into the Ford Focus first. I want to focus on the scanner. Now, you may not necessarily think about this, right? I've done a couple of videos on this before, but we're going to reiterate it again because you might not be aware. On a Ford Focus, it's got two different wiper arms. So on the last gen in the United States, like 2016, 2017, 2018 Focus, they have the wipers that go like this. They go out like that. So anytime I do wiper work, not necessarily replacing the blades, but anytime I do any work regarding the arms, which to get underneath the cowl or anything like that, I may need to do that. Anytime I do work with the arms, I need to recalibrate those wiper arms. So there's actually a function in here. It's in the body control module. And then functional tests here. And then you'll see down here, wiper motor module calibration. So this procedure places the wiper motor module in a calibration mode. So it actually has two separate motors. So there's no linkage tying them together or anything either. So I have to calibrate the motors if I do any of the work. Perform this procedure if the wiper arms have been removed and reinstalled in any way. So before performing this procedure, make sure the following operations are complete. Windshield wipers have been installed correctly according to manufacturer specifications. Battery has sufficient charge because we're going to need voltage. A low battery voltage may prevent the body control module from entering calibration mode, and the windshield needs to be clean and dry. So we'll continue. And make sure the engine's switched on and ignition is switched on and engine's not running. Then you're going to press the wiper and washer switch down 3 times within 5 seconds. So just a quick boop, boop, boop. And then the wipers will swipe upwards to a pre-initialization position and stop. You're then going to manually grab the wipers, pull them out towards the A-pillar molding until the distance between the wiper arm and the edge of the windshield is at 50 millimeters. So you have to have a metric measuring tape. Make sure it's within 50 millimeters. When that's done on both sides, then you're going to press the wiper washer switch down 1 time. That's going to set those positions to the approved position, and then they're going to move back to park. If the wiper arms are pulled too close to the A-pillar, you can't go back. You don't want to push them back. You're just going to want to start it over, start the procedure over. So if I go, oops, 40, 30 millimeters, whatever, you need to start the procedure over again because they don't want you to push it backwards. It could damage the motor. So we don't want to do that. Right. So we want to make sure we do that. Hit continue. And then once it's done, it will just be procedures complete. And the motor will be then in normal mode. Then you want to do a low speed wiper test and a high speed wiper test to make sure that they don't go flopping off the side of the windshield. So I thought that was kind of interesting when I first found out about that, because I'm like, I didn't really think there were too many cars over here in the States that needed it. I know there's cars out there where even to replace the blades to get them up from underneath the cowl. I think it's some Volkswagen models, you would need to do that in order to even just change the blades because they're buried underneath the cowl and you can't reach them. So kind of interesting. There's other things that you would need to do too. So like TPMS, right? We can do that with or without scanner. In this case, battery monitoring system. So on Ford's, their battery monitoring system, we talked about it a little bit in the program there, but Ford's battery monitoring system, what they have is, let's say I'm sitting in the driveway doing some work, cleaning the car or something like that. If I go to a certain point where that battery level gets too low, it'll start shutting off modules just to save power. And then once it gets into that mode, I have to wait 8 hours to reset the system in order for it to allow the stuff to power back up. So like the radio shuts off, a couple other modules shut off. So to force that reset, instead of having to actually go through and wait the 8 hours, we go into battery monitor set, cycle the key on, function resets the battery monitoring system. After the battery is replaced, body control module is replaced, or if I need to do it by the workshop manual, or if I'm in that mode where it shuts stuff off. So it goes in there. In this case, this is going to, with the simulator software, it's not going to let me get all the way through, but it's only a couple steps. Just follow the instructions on the screen. It'll get you there. All right. Next one's going to be, let's see, who do I want to pull up? This BMW here. So that's going to have a couple different functions there. Let's go into the service resets menu. Look at maintenance. Right, so an alignment, I guess alignments are kind of maintenance. I'm thinking more like fluids and stuff, but alignments are maintenance, right? So that one doesn't have it listed. So, you know, you have to do like the reset the steering angle sensor, right? Could be an adjustment. All right, replace automatic transmission fluid, replace battery. There's a calibration for that. Replace the disc pads for that. Engine coolant bleed procedure, right? So if I need to go in there. And there's a cooling system ventilation. So if I do any coolant work on there, you have to go and bleed the air out of the system. So you go through cooling system ventilation. This one may or may not let me do it. No fault codes. So continue. And then we'll do venting. Perform the following steps in a specified order. Start the bleeding procedure for the engine cooling system. Takes about 12 minutes. Therefore, make sure you have a charger on there or a battery maintainer on there, because you don't want the battery to drop within that 12 minutes. Then you're going to perform all these procedures. I'm not going to walk through it all, but just know you need to follow each procedure step by step. Fully depress the accelerator pedal for 10 seconds is the last step. Make sure you're counting 10 seconds. Don't start the engine, and then continue. And then it'll go through and it's going to walk you through. Here's what the current RPM of the coolant pump speed. It's going to fluctuate up and down and whatnot and allow you to bleed the air out of the system. You can continue to go and then switch off ignition, otherwise the coolant pump will continue running. And then did I terminate it? Do I want to repeat it or not? I'll just hit exit. Right, so a couple different procedures there. Battery learn procedure, like I said, bunch of different things in there that we could do. Then the last one I want to go through that I wanted to mention, because this is a fairly new occurrence out there in the world. So I'm going to activate this 2024 Audi A5. Yeah, A5. So on these, and it's going to act a little funky. I'm just going to warn you, but just because it's a simulator. But if I wanted to go in there and go into my engine, and I'll just pick a different engine here. Notice how Volkswagen and Audi now, on some functions, it's not the whole vehicle, right? So it's not like Chrysler where you're locked out of the vehicle with security. It's at the functional test level. So right now I can go in here and I could read codes. Right, it's going to just pull the codes in. By the way, don't replace stuff based on fault codes alone. I like that. All right, so I can do that without having to go into security access. I could probably view readiness monitors. Yeah, I can view readiness monitors without having to do that, right? I can read data without having to do that. But when I go into functional tests and special functions, then it's a security link function. So these are their security tokens that they need. Now, with Snap-on tools, what's unique about us is the only requirement we have for you is you need to set up a profile access code. It's like a 4-digit PIN number. You have to have it on your Snap-on profile, technician profile. But once this comes up, all you got to do is enter whatever that is, which is 4 digits. Any 4 digits can be whatever 4 digits you want. You hit OK, it's going to unlock it. Now, in this case, I think it's going to give me an error because I'm in a simulator, but it'll still end up unlocking it anyways. Yeah, so it said it failed to start a session, but I can just hit continue and it lets me in there anyways. On a real life car, I wouldn't if you had that error. But if you put in the wrong code, however, let me show you that too. So if you put in the wrong code, gosh, yeah, it might not. It might leave it unlocked actually. Yeah, okay. So if you put in the wrong code, it'll just say you put in the wrong code and you have to put in the right code. So I couldn't duplicate it because now it's unlocked. It'll stay unlocked for 90 minutes. Basic setting menu in here, and then we can just go through and see. This is going to give me a lot of different options, more than probably you would have on a real car. It's just going to give me like everything that could possibly be there, like reset adaptations after I do like a transmission service or something like that. I could do. Let's see, camshaft adjustment tests, throttle valve adaptation tests. That's probably less maintenance, right? Oxygen sensors, probably less maintenance. There's a few down here. Let's see, cooling oil valve, perhaps. Reset learn values, probably not so much. As a regen on the cat on that one. Let's see. Timing chain elongation test, that's nice. Or reset it after you replace the timing chain. Let's see. Test of cylinder individual mixture deviation. So that's for like diagnosing misfires and stuff. Adaptation of fuel pump. So not a ton of maintenance items specifically on this list, but other things you might need to do after somewhat maintenance related stuff. So just thought I just wanted to bring it up because you can't really do any functional tests on these newer Volkswagens and Audis without that profile access code, and Snap-on includes that cost in your whatever your current software is, so you don't have to pay extra like some other places. So with that, that is going to be vehicle maintenance functions. Let's talk about what we're going to talk about next week. If I can get this up on the screen here. There we go. So next week, we are going to continue along with our OEM-specific ADAS functions. So next week is Nissan up. So they have this thing called ProPilot Assist. We can kind of see that on the screen. So we're going to talk about, what makes them unique. And I'm sure we're going to delve into ProPilot Assist as well. So join me next week, same time, same place. As always, 6 and 9 Eastern. If you want to join on Zoom, go to snapon.com/OT. Otherwise, you can join me at 6 p.m. on YouTube. It's youtube.com/Snap-on Diagnostics. Or you can join me at 9 p.m. Eastern on Facebook. So Facebook Live. So that would be on Snap-on Diagnostics Products and Training. That's what they changed the page name to. So you can find me there, here, there, and everywhere. Please join me. And if you want to subscribe on YouTube, you can always scan that QR code and it'll automatically bring you there and subscribe you. Also, if you want to see any of the other topics in this series, anywhere from intro to ADAS through vehicle communication issues and everything else in between, there's a wealth of knowledge based in there. And, it's free training, 30 minutes or so, roughly, give or take. And, you'll have that nice training for you for free anytime you want, 24 hours a day, available on the YouTube channel. There is a playlist on the YouTube channel just for live training. Also, do we have your email address? If we don't have your email address, you're missing out on some good information when it comes to diagnostic related information, such as Tech Focus articles, SureTrack blogs, quick tips, new product release announcements. They send out my training schedule periodically, maybe monthly or something like that. And then in the middle of the picture there, you can see there's an example on an article on diagnosing a stretch timing chain. So definitely worth your time, I think. If you're not getting that content, definitely scan that QR code, type in your information, and that'll get you your content you need. With that, time for questions. So if you do have questions on Zoom and you joined a little late, if you find that Q&A button, top or bottom of your screen, wherever that is, just type in your question there and I'll get to those. If you're watching on YouTube, feel free to just use the live chat function. And if you're watching this after the fact, this will end up being pre-recorded. So if it's the late class, it's pre-recorded. I'll still be able to answer your questions while it's live, but I'm pre-recording it now for later, just so you're aware. Jay says, thanks for the class on Zoom. Appreciate that, Jay. Also appreciate you joining every week to week. On YouTube, we got Hussein saying thank you very much to you as well. Once again, another one of you diehards that joins every single week, so I appreciate that. Nick's joining from the UK. It's very late at night over there, but I always appreciate you joining me live on YouTube as well. He says, thank you very much for all the free training. He does have a question. One pedal on a new vehicle. How does that work? I'm not sure what you mean there, Nick, about one pedal on a new vehicle. I'm not. Definitely need more context on that, and I might not be able to get a response to that, but in time, I don't know. But Nick, if you can give me a little bit more color as to what you mean about one pedal, that'd be appreciated because I haven't seen a vehicle with only one pedal yet. They might be out there. I don't know. Maybe it's an EV or something like that. I'm not sure. Never seen it before. So if you can give me a little color on that, I'll give you another few seconds. I know there's a delay on YouTube, but not really sure what you mean there with one pedal. Oh, EV vehicle. Once again, not sure. Maybe it's when I lift off the brake supply. Honestly, I've never seen it. So if you can give me a example of a year, make, model, I can do some research on it. Maybe we can talk about it later. Like you had asked about brake by wire too, so that might be something we can, a pedal focused class perhaps, right? So we got one pedal on an EV vehicle, or we got brake by wire is another one that you've asked. So if you can give me a year, make, model of an example, I can do some research and maybe we'll throw it in towards the end of the year. That's the best I can tell you right now. And if you don't have one right now, that's fine. You can always come back at me next week or whatever. So with that, I think we have exhausted the questions. Thank you, everybody, for watching. I appreciate your time. Thank you for spending a little bit of time with me. Hopefully you'll join me next week for Nissan. With that, enjoy the rest of your week. Enjoy your weekend. Have a nice night and take care.